Well, you knew this was coming after the Pixar sequels video. But anyway, let's start talking about DreamWorks franchises. And where better to start than with their first franchise?
Shrek!
Now, the first Shrek movie is great. The voice acting is really good, the humor sticks the landing. But Shrek 2 is one of the first animated sequels in history to be better than the original. Shrek 2 left such an undeniable impact on the Shrek franchise. It's introduced many staples like Puss in Boots, Fiona's mom and dad far, far away. It did everything that a sequel should do and even more. And not to mention the amazing villain Shrek 2 has. Now, after Shrek 2, such an amazing film, you have Shrek the Third, the worst movie in the franchise. Why? Puss, Donkey, and Fiona literally serve no purpose. Having Prince Charming be the villain was such a lazy move that didn't pay off. And literally every scene that involves those horrid babies is god-awful. Now, thankfully, DreamWorks made up for this abomination with their next Shrek movie, Shrek Forever After. Now, Shrek Forever After isn't perfect or as good as the first two movies, but still very good nonetheless. The plot is very interesting and realistic. The characters are important and likable again after Shrek the Third. But easily the best thing about this movie, in my opinion, is
Rumpelstiltskin!
Now, what makes Rumpelstiltskin such a great villain is that 1, he's the only Shrek villain who got what he wanted, and 2, he's full of personality and charisma. So overall, Shrek Forever After is a very fun film. But then we have the last movie in this franchise, Puss in Boots. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of this movie, but what I do love about it is that it tries to be its own movie, not just another Shrek movie. And, the animation is beautiful, I'll give it that, and the chase scenes are pretty cool. But I won't talk much more about Puss in Boots since I have a video planned about it. Now, on to the next franchise, Madagascar. Now, this is the most average franchise that DreamWorks made. The first movie is easily the best and funniest in my opinion. Now, something I noticed about this franchise is it gets more complicated with each installment. The first movie's plot is pretty simple, zoo animals going into the wild for the first time. Second movie, the zoo animals plane crash to Africa while attempting to get back home. Third movie, zoo animals accidentally join a circus and travel halfway through Europe while being chased by a psychotic hunter. Spin-off movie, psychotic revenge-hungry octopus attempts to turn every single penguin on Earth into a monster. But overall, it isn't DreamWorks' worst franchise, and there can be some enjoyment found in watching these movies. But in my opinion, most of them are nothing special, really. Anyway, on to our next franchise, Kung Fu Panda. Now, this is the first franchise I've talked about yet that doesn't have any bad movies. But as with the majority of DreamWorks franchises, the first movie is easily the best one in the Kung Fu Panda trilogy. The soundtrack and action scenes are some of the best I've seen from DreamWorks. They were able to take this plot that doesn't really sound good on paper and make it one of the best movies they've ever made. The second movie is still really solid, but the problem I have with it is 1, Shifu barely gets any screen time, and 2, most of the Furious 5 except Tigress could easily be removed without changing the movie. The third movie is easily the weakest one. It isn't bad per se, just average. In Kung Fu Panda 3, this time all of the Furious 5 could be removed without impact, and the action scenes are a major downgrade. And while I like the villain's design, I have to admit, he's a literal joke. Then we have DreamWorks' magnum opus, How to Train Your Dragon. The first movie in this franchise is, in my and many others' opinions, the best movie DreamWorks has ever made. The first How to Train Your Dragon movie, unlike most of DreamWorks' library, takes itself very seriously. It's extremely realistic and involves little to no humor. It always makes me happy seeing movies like these succeed. But then the second movie takes itself too seriously. I mean, it's the darkest one in the trilogy easily, and it's a bit too dark for my taste. Also, the villain's kind of bad, but it's still an amazing movie nonetheless. The third movie is also really great, but unlike the second movie, it's too kiddified. But overall, this is still the best franchise DreamWorks has made, in my opinion. But then we have Trolls. I mean, the first movie isn't bad. As I said in my DreamWorks ranking video, it's the most average movie I've ever seen. But the sequel, Trolls World Tour, oh my god, this is easily DreamWorks' worst movie. The movie doesn't know what it wants to be, the story is a literal mess, and while the animation is good, the soundtrack is extremely forgettable, not nearly as good as the first movies. And finally, we have the last and probably the most questionable franchise DreamWorks has made, the Croods. In my opinion, The Croods is definitely one of the more forgettable movies DreamWorks has ever made. I mean, it's decent, but nothing I'd expect a sequel from, so I was very shocked when they announced the sequel. The first Croods movie is nothing special, really. I mean, I don't understand how people love the animation style, and the characters are pretty bad. The story is quite interesting though, I'll give it that. But the sequel subverted my expectations in pretty much every way possible. It isn't perfect, but it's a major improvement from the first movie. The story's better, more interesting, the soundtrack's better, the animation's better, the characters are more likable. The only thing that decreased for me is the humor. The humor in Croods 2 isn't really good. So overall, this is a pretty good franchise. Not the best, not the worst. So basically, DreamWorks makes really good sequels and franchises most of the time. So while I still have time, why not rank these franchises? No, just no. Kind of enjoyable. Very good, but suffers from bad third and fifth installments. Surprisingly good. Amazing. Near perfect. Anyways, the video's over now. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and comment down below telling me how I did. But anyways, I have to go now. Goodbye and stay safe.